Hello everybody, welcome to That's Football. Is Victor Gyökeres the biggest flop in the Premier League this season? Well, I tell you what, I think it's a crazy take, and I'll tell you why. This, for me, is why the over-analysis of certain things in football is incredible. And I think Arsenal are always at the very top of that. How can a guy that's only been at the club for a very short period of time, who 3 weeks ago, or just before his injury, had a really good 45 minutes and was looking really good, and now he's a flop again. But also, you've got Wirtz for double the price, who's got no goals and no assists, and no one ever bloody talks about it. But Gyökeres, who's playing in a team that's top of the league, who've scored more goals than anybody else apart from Man City, is a flop. And for me, that is just incredible over-analysis without the nuance that is required. Because, look, I will acknowledge that Gyökeres is struggling in an Arsenal shirt. You know, it's not the easiest job in the world, and he's not necessarily doing that well. But I'm hearing people going, they should have bought Sesko, they should have bought Ekitike, they should have bought Ollie Watkins. Yeah, because that would have really changed the situation massively, wouldn't it? He's up against teams that are playing a low block in a team that moves the ball slowly. He's coming from a team that advances the ball quickly and operates in space on the attack. There is an adjustment period there, 100%, of course there is. And also, it's not like any other striker that was available is really tearing it up. I mean, I think Ekitike's done well. Sesko at United, that's going to be a project. Voltemeda, Wizza at Newcastle's not even played yet. Delap at Chelsea's had injuries. Isak at Liverpool. I mean, Isak at Liverpool is getting less conversation than Gyökeres at Arsenal. And Isak's cost double the price. I find it incredible. But look, let's deal with Gyökeres, because I do not think Isak's a flop. I do not think Wirtz is a flop. And I do not think Gyökeres is a flop. What I think we're seeing here is the challenge of the Premier League in different systems when you've not played here or you're moving from one to another like Isak. It is only just going to be Christmas. There are teams that are struggling like Liverpool, and they're trying to build something new. And there are teams like Arsenal that are top of the league but are playing with an out-and-out striker for the first time in years. And I agree, right here, right now, if Havertz was fit, you probably would bench him for Gyökeres, but then you're back in the situation when you don't score a goal and you go, we need a striker. So I think Arsenal need to stick with this. I think Arsenal need to back this player, and they need to learn collectively how to do better. Because I think Arsenal are a very pragmatic side. Partially because you look at that Wolves game on Saturday night. We played them a few days before. We could have broke the Premier League goal scoring record. I'm not joking, it could have been 10. They opened up, they had a go because they're playing Man United. They go to the Emirates, playing top of the league, they park the bus, and it's a completely different game. Arsenal are not going to beat teams 4 or 5-0, and Gyökeres is not going to score hat-tricks against teams that are going to come and play like that. So you've got to put that in as a point straight away. But also, I think Arsenal and Arteta need to learn what they've got in a striker. You know, I think Saka, for one, is an incredible crosser of the ball. But he gets the ball and Arsenal slow down. A lot of the time, he gets the ball, it slows down, it's looking to cut in and shoot, it's a little 5-yard pass. As a striker, you want to move. You want to move onto an early cross, you want to move onto an early ball. And Arsenal have a responsibility as well to adapt the way they're playing towards a striker who wants the ball quick. And they need to learn that as well. I've seen something about Gyökeres gives the ball away a lot, but he wasn't bought to receive the ball with 6 defenders around him and link up the play. That's not what, if that's what you wanted, why bother? You may as well play Havertz there. So there is nuance to it. I don't think he's a flop. I question why this is being over-analysed at a club that has lost 2 games out of 16, that is top of the league by 2 points, that has conceded less than anybody else and has scored the second most amount of goals. And the striker is being called a flop. If that's not the definition of obsession with Arsenal that we've seen for many years, then I don't know what is. Because in 7th place, the champions of England have lost 6 games. They've scored less goals than Manchester United, Chelsea and Arsenal by a very long way. And they've spent £300 million nearly on 2 players who don't score and don't get assists. So the conversation really should be about Isak and Wirtz. not about Gyökeres. But we're here to talk about Gyökeres. So I just think it's just, from day one, people have wanted Gyökeres to be a failure. And I don't know why. It's this weird obsession with Arsenal. From day one, people have tried to call him a flop. Now, he may not end up being the next Thierry Henry. But I have watched Arsenal this season. And although you want your striker to score goals, one thing I've said numerous times this season is that they're a better team with Gyökeres in it because he's physical. He occupies centre-backs, and that can create space for everybody else. So yeah, you want to add the goals in there. You definitely do. But they're not really catering to him at the moment. I don't see enough quick ball into the box. I don't see enough quick ball into the channels. It's very pragmatic. It's very slow build-up, which is what Arsenal have been for a while. So they have a responsibility to feed him. And he has a responsibility to learn a different way of playing. And that's not going to happen overnight. But they are top of the league. And if they figure it out, which I'm sure they will do, well, the sky's the limit in the second half of the season. So if I was an Arsenal fan, I'd just be very wary of this conversation. And I would be very much answering it with, look at the league table, look at how we're doing, and we're finding reasons to moan. Unless you're going to bring in Erling Haaland as well, what would you do? Do you want to go back to Havertz and moan about not having an out-and-out striker? Or do you genuinely think you should have gone for Sesko? Because I'll tell you as a United fan, and every United fan will tell you, putting Sesko in your team isn't necessarily going to work. He is a work in progress. He is a prospect. He's had an injury. And I don't really see Arsenal chucking in loads of crosses into the box unless it's a corner. So I think, you had a choice, Gyökeres and Sesko. We picked up the player that you didn't want. I'd have happily took Gyökeres. So, we took Sesko. I don't think out of those two players it makes any bit of difference. I think they've both got to learn the Arsenal way, which is very different to what they're used to. And Arsenal need to learn to play to your striker's strength. If you don't give Erling Haaland, Erling Haaland in an Arsenal team at the moment would probably score more goals than Gyökeres, but he wouldn't be a golden boot contender because it's not that type of club. He's not going to get loads of one-on-ones, is he? He's not going to get loads of breakaway goals. He's going to be surviving on whatever comes into the box against the low block. So that's my thoughts on it. But look, if you're asking me for flop of the season, if I had to be pushed, you can't look any further from Liverpool. And I think Liverpool fans know that themselves. Nobody wants it to be the case, but you have to look at that. The volume of money that's been spent on Isak, who is a Premier League proven striker, it's abysmal what they're getting from him. And what's the excuse? He didn't have a pre-season. He's had a couple of injuries. He doesn't look very good. So I think Isak's the flop of the season so far, simply because he is Premier League proven, unlike Gyökeres, unlike Wirtz, unlike Frimpong. He is Premier League proven. But I also think it's too early. I think that you want a player to hit the ground running. And, you could look at Wizard at Newcastle, who was out of contract this summer and hasn't barely played for Newcastle. But it is ridiculously early. And I think players should be judged on a full season. Get your comments in below. Let me know your thoughts. Smash a like on the video and subscribe. I'll speak to you on the next one.